Well, welcome to Find the Way, and I want to just pause right now and wish you a Happy New Year. I'm Mike Sherbino. So glad you're with us at the beginning of 2017. Doesn't even seem right to say that, but 2017 is here, and we're also here with you today as we come to you on behalf of Find the Way. It's a program that focuses on how Jesus is more than enough for life and all that it throws at us. And 2016 had a lot of stuff that caught people off guard. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But there also seems to be a lot of menacing things that are just out there in the future, taunting us with the whole thing of, is there hope and how are we going to get through? But at the beginning of this new year, I want to share with you fresh hope for the road ahead, that Jesus really is more than enough, that he is the answer. And as you know, I'm Mike Sherbino. I'm your host. We've been on air now for almost 11 months. Just excited to be bringing this program to you across the coast. And with me today in the studio is a young man that I've gotten to know. He's a husband, a father, and someone that I'm really growing to admire. And when I heard a bit of his story, I thought, this is a story that every person, especially the guys, can relate to as we start the new year. And I want to welcome Cam Klemenczyk.
Well, I really appreciate being here today, and it's an honor. It's a privilege. It's a great thing to be here.
Well, Cam, we're glad you're here. And, this is the beginning of the new year. So let's think about New Year's resolutions. And I know that my New Year's resolution for this year is that I want to be on the cover of Muscle Fitness magazine by the end of the year.
I think we all do.
What do you do with resolutions? Do you make them? Do you not?
I in the past I made them, and then I quickly given up on it. But this year I aim forward, and I think we all do.
Okay. I have a resolution to give up chocolate, and I try to do that for about an hour, and then I get back on. But we'll talk a little bit about that, especially because sometimes the reason we give in and break the New Year's resolutions is that our coping mechanisms are not what we really think they are, and we get overwhelmed with stress, and we turn to different things. And today we want to talk especially with the whole daunting image of what's ahead of us in this coming year, how that Jesus is more than enough. And I know that, Cam, that you're going to have a whole lot to share about that. But first of all, we're going to be right back, and we want to listen to a song by Ryan Stevenson called The Eye of the Storm.
When the solid ground is falling out from underneath my feet, between the black skies and my red eyes, I can barely see. And when I'm feeling like I've been let down by my friends and my family, I can hear the rain reminding me. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. When my hopes and dreams are far from me and I'm running out of faith, I see the future I picture slowly fade away. And when the tears of pain and heartache are pouring down my face, I find my peace in Jesus' name. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. Yes, you do, Lord. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. And I just don't know how I'm gonna make ends meet. I did my best, now I'm scared to death that we might lose everything. And when a sickness takes my child away and there's nothing I can do, my only hope is to trust you. I trust you, Lord. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control.
Welcome back to Find the Way. My name is Mike Sherbino. I'm your host and speaker on the program. So glad you've joined us. And I want to thank the many of you who have supported this ministry, this program over the past year. If you want, you can go to our website at FindTheWay.faith. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your comments, your suggestions, and your questions on the things that we talk about. And if you'd like to support this ministry, you can do that there as well. We appreciate hearing from you so much. But as we begin this new year, we do enter into the new year with 2016 really close behind us in the rearview mirror. I was looking at the top 10 stories, Cam, that the world has been dealing with. And let me just reiterate them really quickly, because when there's been so many negative things or emotionally charged things, if you're like me, I tend to just shove it in the back, and you kind of wonder what's clogging us all up. But here's the first thing. I mean, the world has been taken up with the U.S. election. That's the number one thing. Trump beating out Hillary Clinton, and the implications of that are still to be seen. And then there was the Brexit exit, which confounded pollsters and odds makers. Britons voted in June to leave the European Union, and that's triggered all sorts of financial and political upheaval. We kind of just want to go under the covers and say it's not going to affect us here in Canada or here in the States. And then all of a sudden in Baton Rouge, there was the killing of Alton Sterling, and how terrible that was, and the rioting that erupted from that. The Pulse nightclub massacre. I'd forgotten about that for the last couple of months. And then all of a sudden it came back to me saying, that was just terrible. Why do we want to forget those things? And we pushed them out of our mind. 49 people were killed. And all the worldwide terror attacks. There's been attacks on police. The whole Democratic email leaks, Russia being accused of that, and what are the implications? We wonder about our safety and security, and I think we especially wonder about it living here in Canada, where we're in somewhat of an isolated cocoon. My brother, who is a pastor and a teacher, also worked with the military, and I know that he is going in the next couple weeks to work with military chaplains who are being deployed all over the world to just stand with Canadian troops who are dealing with all sorts of these harsh realities that you and I, Cam, are spared from. And the list goes on and on of the stuff that people are dealing with. And then it comes down to our own personal life as we seek to find meaning. And I wanted you to come today, Cam, because, we look at the global picture and it can be overwhelming, but it's not as overwhelming as our own personal stuff, our own mess. And so suddenly we come to this, and you've had an amazing journey of faith. We're all on a journey, aren't we?
That's right.
And but how do we find our way back? And I thought if you could just share a little bit about your journey, that would be so cool. Take us back. You're 35 years old. You're a husband. You're a dad. You got a thriving electrical business and a whole bunch of other things. And I met you when you were wiring up a house for a friend of mine, and then recently for my own sister. So how neat was that? And as we shared the story, I thought people need to hear your story because I think it helps them to forge their way through. So take us back to when you were a kid.
Absolutely. Growing up, I grew up in East Vancouver, down in the lower income part of Vancouver. And so you have the challenges of growing up in that part of society there. And so most of my friends at a young age, we were great friends. We did a lot of fun things. And then as we grew older, they started getting into problems, and they started getting into crime. And the majority of my friends became career criminals.
Career criminals.
And
wow.
they tried to push me into it, and they had a lot of respect because I stood my ground and said no. But as we grew up, things started happening. And and what I found in my life, I grew up, my father was a DJ, and we used to do I used to go. And
I hope our DJ is listening in right now. Dwayne, are you there? Okay.
Yeah, so
Thumbs up.
I used to go to the weddings and the different things, and my dad used to DJ, and I enjoyed it. Music is a big thing in my life. And so from a young age, I really sought after some kind of meaning to my life. And I thought, you know what? When I looked at U2, and I remember Rattle and Hum back in those days in the 80s and 90s, and I thought, you know what, if I could just be like them and somehow live their life. I'll be happy. I'll be satisfied. That's what I need. I didn't know what I needed. I had no idea. I was a young kid trying to find my way in life. And, you know...
So you didn't know what you needed, but you knew you needed something.
I didn't. And, you know, and when we talk about faith and we do different things like this, you know, we didn't even have we had a Bible in our house, but it wasn't open. We didn't have anything. My parents weren't, you know, religious. There wasn't anything. In my heart, I just was looking for something to bring meaning and satisfaction to my life. So as I went on, you know, I pursued the music career, and I thought, you know, what's the best way of getting into it? Well, I read biographies, Jimi Hendrix, Buddy Guy, a lot of these guys, Eric Clapton, and I found out you had to get into the scene to get into the exposure.
Okay.
So here I am, you know, a young guy, 15 years old, and I'm hanging out with guys that are 25 to 30 years old, and I became a technician for a band, and we started playing in all the venues downtown. We had HMV, and we had the doors open. We played live there. We started getting everywhere. The manager started taking us to different venues.
Wow. And
I'm only 16 years old, and I'm hanging out with these older guys. I'm mature.
How are you feeling about yourself at this time?
Right now?
No, when you were doing all that.
It was this experience.
It was a bit of a rush, I bet.
It was. And, you know, you get into the culture. I started my own band at that time, and we played at the Grand Island Arts Fair and different places. And I thought, you know what, the more I pursued it, the more I got into the culture and I got into the drugs that came along with it and the different things. And I thought, you know, this is going to satisfy me. And at that point, we're building a little studio in my friend's basement, and I thought, you know what, this is it. But I was just so empty. No matter how far I went into it, I was just so empty. It just didn't really bring long, satisfaction to me. And, you know, growing up, I went to Sunday school. I didn't want to go to Sunday school.
Okay.
I wasn't interested in going to school on Sunday. Like, it wasn't something that I was interested in. But my friends went, and I went, and I had an honest opinion when I went there. And I thought, you know, if there's a God, I would like to know him. I don't know who he is. And if there's a heaven and hell, I'd like to know.
Okay.
But I don't know. So when I got into the band and everything in that whole part of my life, Sunday school just gone, got into the culture, I felt myself like I was going down and downward spiral. As the more I got into drugs and things, they weren't even satisfying. And one day we ended up at the P&E.
Now, the P&E, for people across Canada, it's like the exhibition, the big exhibition in Vancouver.
The Pacific National Expedition in Vancouver. It's a place where they have rides and different vendors, and I ended up going there with a friend of mine, and we just said, well, let's just take the day. It's summer. And we went to the mini golf section. And as we were in the mini golf section, there's these little kids in there mouthing us off and giving us a hard time. And, you know, after a while, it really got on me. And I was just like, you know what, let's go. And these kids followed. And I'm like, okay, Scott, we're going to go somewhere and take care of these kids. So we're going to find a corner and take care of them. Found a corner, but we found a security guard. And anyway, so we walked around. It was closing time, and all of a sudden I walked around and ended up at the P&E gospel booth. And it's some local Christians that give out literature and tell people about the Bible.
Wow.
And, you know, at that point I was seeking. There's things that are happening in my life. I was feeling guilty about my sin and different things I was doing. And I was trying to make amends with people. I ripped off a bike from a friend. I returned it. I started helping my mother out, thinking, well, good works. You know, I started seeking. And I remember walking in there, and I felt completely out of place. I didn't even want to go there. And a guy named David Seed came up to me and opened up the Bible. I told him about all these things that were happening in my life. He says, look, just listen to this. John 3:16.
Now, John 3:16, that's a verse in the Bible.
It's a verse in the Bible, and a lot of people have heard the 3:16 in many sports activities and different things. And he pointed out that verse. He says, look, you know what, Cam? You know, God so loved the world. He loved you that he did something. He gave his only son into this world, that whoever believes in him would not perish or be lost in their sin, but have everlasting life. And he explained the verse to me, and for the first time I thought, you know what, I think this is what I need. And I prayed with them at the end. They found out I went to Sunday school, and they were associated with that.
Okay.
So at this point...
And they dragged you back.
Well, I got a call, and this is the amazing thing. I got a call from this guy, Eddie, and I went to a day camp in the summer, and I didn't want to go there. I was just too young to stay at home. And Eddie calls me up out of the blue, and I gave him a hard time. When I was there, I didn't want to be there. I said, Eddie, he says, hey, Cam, do you want to come back to Sunday school? I'm like, whoa. At this point, I was supposed to go up and live with my grandfather up in the Queen Charlotte's area. My mother pleaded and begged for me not to go. And I decided not to go back to school. It was a Christmas on. So I had about 8 months or 9 months of thinking where I didn't go to school. I rode my skateboard around with my dog, and I looked at the stars, and I looked at things, and I thought about my life and the meaning of it. I ended up back at Sunday school, and once again, the Bible was opened.
And you're about 17 or 18 now?
I'm 17 at this point.
Okay.
And, we're reading in Genesis, some of the stories in Genesis. And anyways, it was alive. And I just, as I'm seeking in my life, trying to find purpose, all these circumstances are happening. And all of a sudden, Eddie says, hey, do you want to come to some meetings? They were going every night. And I said, sure. So I went to the meetings, and I heard the Bible being preached. I heard about God's plan for us, about our need, and we're sinners, and that God sent his son to take care of our sin. And that if I believe and I accept his gift of life.
How did you believe?
Well, that was the problem. I walked out one night and I really wanted to believe. I understood I was a sinner. I had no problem with that. I understood there was a God.
Okay.
And I understood that I deserved to be punished for my sin. I knew it. And I walked out one night and I thought, hey, how do I believe? And I shook the speaker's hands and I said, hey, I'm saved. I believed. And that night, I just kind of laid on my bed, and it was like I was laying on a rock all night, and I just realized, Cam, you're never going to be right with God. You're never going to heaven. You're never going to get this. The next day I went back. I gave up on everything, and the preacher said this, it's not a feeling, it's trust. And for the first time, I realized, you know what? He died for me. And that day on November 9th of 1998, after 8 o'clock at p.m., sitting in that chair, I realized that Jesus Christ came and died for me personally. And the moment I accepted that, nobody had to tell me. But I had peace for the first time, and I knew that I was on my way to heaven.
You had peace for the first time. What would you tell people listening today if somebody's listening at the beginning of the new year saying, man, I wish I could have peace? How do you get peace?
Well,
like you did?
I tried it. As a little kid, you try accumulating things. You get all the baseball cards. You got the set. Now what?
Right.
You get the toys. You get it. Now what? And so in life, I tried to find things to bring me peace or bring me that satisfaction. And I always found myself disappointed. And really, there's a spiritual part to us. And that spiritual need only God can fill. And it's not through religion. It's not a way of me trying to reach God. God really wants to have a relationship with us. And he's pointing out to us and speaking to us and saying, hey, you know what? I've done something for you. Do you understand? And do you understand the problem of why you don't have peace? It's because we have sin. And that's natural. We're born with it. And God is taking care of that, and he's paid the price. And his son came into the world to take that away. And if we believe and we accept and we understand what he's done for us, we can personally understand what it's like to have a relationship with God. Now we're talking about somebody that came from a non-Bible background or
Hey, you made that very clear. And so as you're listening here to Find the Way, you've been listening to the story of Cam Klemensick. And Cam, glad you've shared that. I'm going to share a little bit of what Jesus had to say about that matter. And we're going to come back, and Cam's going to have a time to talk right at the end about how you can know that same peace that he does as well. Welcome back to Find the Way. As we enter into this new year, it seems that the older we get, the more tired we become. And probably the line that I hear most often from people goes something like this: if I could only slow down, I just need to take a break. Or as Cam's been talking about, I really need to find my purpose. What is it that I'm running so hard to catch? Well, the brokenness of people is somewhat overwhelming if we think that we can solve their problems. And the questions and needs of people, and your questions and needs, are oftentimes, they're only increasing. And it's almost as if we're looking for someone to invite us in, to hear our problems, to provide a solution. Like when you were a child and your mother would put a Band-Aid on the cut or kiss it and make it all better. And that sense of weariness and discouragement, which is hanging over people, was in part what prompted me to share this message today to you as you begin the new year, called The Invitation of a Lifetime. And the words of Jesus for some today will become like a light for those who feel engulfed in darkness, or maybe like a cup of cold water on a hot day. And to some who feel sick at heart, it'll be like soothing medicine which brings needed relief. And to others who feel like they're wandering aimlessly in life, they will provide the needed direction. And one of those words is what Jesus said to people in Matthew 11:28. He said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. And then Jesus had the audacity to say this. He said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We need to pause and say, is that really true? If I'm surrendering to Jesus, if I'm trusting in him, this invitation of a lifetime, will it really lighten the load? And Cam, that's what you experienced as you were going as well.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. I think when we think about the invitation, there's three components that I want to draw our attention to. First of all, Jesus' invitation is to give us relief from our addictions. Now, let me just say this. For years, I've lived with an addict. Well, I hope I got your attention by saying that. And the addict was in our family, and we've almost broken her of her problem. But her addiction, one of my daughters, was game shows. And for years, one of the dreams that my daughter would have would be to hear Bob Barker call out her name and say, come on down. I believe, in all seriousness, though, that when Jesus said these words, it was with far more passion than any talk show host could summon. Jesus says, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He said, if you're weary and burdened with life, come to me. Hey, folks, that applies to all of us to some degree. Some of you have tried door number 1 and have got the fancy car, but that didn't meet the need. And others of you have tried door number 2, the money for a terrific education. And people, we live in the most educated time in history, yet never there has been more mental, emotional, and marital breakdowns. And some of you have tried door number 3, which could be your career or hobbies, even family, but has left you empty. And Cam, you shared a little bit about how you were on the road to being a rising rock star or even part of a band, and you said there had to be something more. No matter what price you paid for it all, the price hasn't been right. And only Jesus could say about himself that he was the door to wholeness and eternal life. And so he says, come to me. Don't come to my associate. Jesus says, don't come to a minister. Don't come to the priest, but come to me. And while the Bible teaches that Jesus died for the sins of the whole world, this passage is teaching also that he died for just you and me. And that's the beauty as we enter into this new year, that Jesus really cares for you. He cares for me. It's a singular invitation. Just like when Bob Barker used to call out someone's name, Jesus is inviting us personally, and all of heaven is waiting to see if you will say yes. And Jesus is saying today, give me your addictions, which have been empty doors that you've tried to open, because Jesus says that he is the door to life. I think Jesus is also saying, give me your weariness. Weariness is interesting. It's probably not quite what you're thinking. As I was, talking to people leading up to Christmas, I think of one conversation I had, and I said, you must be tired as you're getting towards the new year. And the lady said, I've been tired for the whole year. And maybe her honesty is enough to draw us in to say, hey, I'm just getting tired of the pace that I'm trying to keep and what it's doing in our lives. In Jesus' day, he was speaking to people who were religious. They had kept all sorts of rules and regulations, and they realized that in the end, it didn't lead to peace. And some of you have tried to be religious and have come away empty, but knowing the Savior is all about a relationship. It's a relationship that takes away the weariness of life. It's a weariness that is caused by sin, and sin is my disobedience to God's word. It is going my own way. And you might think, well, I make the rules for my life. But you and I know that there is a weariness that is hard to explain and sometimes is very daunting and haunting. One of the greatest people of the past was a German monk. His name was Martin Luther. He grew weary of trying to find peace through all the rituals of the church. And in the end, he found that turning to Christ was all that he needed. He was more than enough. Let me pause for a moment, because some of you listening today, you've already said yes to Jesus. You're walking that life of faith, but there's still the weariness. I think that often what happens, and it may be the New Year's resolution that you need to make today, is that even though you claim to be a child of God, to say, God, I want to surrender 110%. I don't want to do it on my own. Sometimes you come to church, you'll say a prayer, you read your Bible on occasion, but Jesus is calling us to walk with him and to say every day, every moment, give me the weariness. Cam, I don't know what your ritual is in life, but I know that for myself, that oftentimes it's not just enough to pray once in the morning or, at night, but daily through the day, I'm saying, Lord, I need to give you this. I need you to take over. I need you to lift the load. And that's why Jesus said, I want you also to give me your burdens. Come to me, all you that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Sometimes people say, I don't want God's way because it's too burdensome. And don't lay guilt on me, Buster. But Jesus is not here to lay guilt, but he's here to take it away. And what the Bible says in John 5:3 is that his commandments are not burdensome, for his commands are the enactment of love. I find it interesting that Jesus makes this incredible offer to people when his popularity was declining. He had talked about the cost of following him, and people had walked away. And even though people were rejecting him, he who was love in the flesh, the one that we celebrated at Christmas, offers to lift the burden of our hearts. All of us are looking for burden bearers, someone to care, someone who will understand. Reminds me of the young lady who was having a horrible day when suddenly the telephone rang and she listened to the kind voice in her ear saying, "How are you, dear? What kind of day are you having?" "Oh, Mother," she said, breaking into bitter tears, "I've had a bad day. The baby won't eat. The washing machine's broken. I haven't had a chance to go shopping. And besides, I just sprained my ankle and I have to hobble around. On top of that, the house is a mess and I'm supposed to have 2 couples for dinner tonight." The mother was shocked and was at once all sympathetic. She said, "Darling," she said, "sit down and relax. Close your eyes. I'll be over in a half an hour and I'll take care of it all. In fact, I'll do everything. And in fact, I'll call George at the office and tell him he should come home and help out for once." "George?" said the housewife. "Who is George?" "Why, George, your husband." She said, "Is this 223-1374? And the lady said, "No, it's 223-1375. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I have the wrong number." And there was a short pause. And the housewife said, "Does this mean you're not coming over to help?" We all want someone, don't we, to carry the burden. And who is there to carry yours today? And when there's no one there to carry your burden, Jesus is saying, I want to be your burden bearer today. And that's the good news that we bring you from Find the Way. You've been listening to Find the Way, and you can find us at www.findtheway.faith. Write to us today and let us know your thoughts, your questions. We would love to hear from you. And Cam, we've loved hearing from you today. Thank you for being a part of our program. What were you thinking as I was sharing those words today?
Well, I was thinking in general, looking into Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. He started this walk of faith, and he's the finisher. You know, he's blessed me with a family, with children, 2 children.
So we're jumping ahead from the rock star days.
Yeah, he's blessed me with a wife that I never would have had, 2 beautiful children, business, and that's been going on for 10 years now. And
so how do you do that walk every day?
I have to learn to say, you know what, Lord, you're in control, and you're my provider, and you're going to have to take over this day and take care of my needs. And
that's your step of daily faith.
That's something that, you know, I've recently started leaning on as I've been into this walk since 2007.
Okay. What would be one piece of advice you'd give to our listeners today?
Well, I mean, our life is a life of faith. I mean, we haven't seen God, but one day we will when we leave this earth, and we have to learn how to walk by faith, and we have to trust him. He's the creator. He's the one that created everything. He's the sustainer, and he's the author and creator of our salvation and our life of faith.
And that one that Cam is talking about is Jesus Christ, and he is waiting to walk into this new year with you if you will only ask him. And we encourage you to do that today.